Hey there, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Home Design Academy podcast. And also, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see the video of this. We are once again joined by Mark Martin from Schultz Miller Construction, based out of Seattle. And Mark is a project manager and project executive with Schultz Miller. And if you don't know of them and you're in the Seattle area, you should definitely look them up. They do really high-end projects. And Mark, we're going to talk today a little bit about pre-construction services, right?
That's correct.
So what I was sort of saying in the beginning before we got on is I work with people with a variety of budgets, and it seems to me like there's a good amount of people out there that still want to wait for the construction drawings to be 100% and then go out and get 3 competitive bids and then choose the contractor that they worked on somewhat solely based on price. I don't necessarily think that that's the best way to do it. And I also, very strongly believe that all homeowners, regardless of the size of their project, really should be engaging the contractor in pre-construction services, even if it costs a little bit more upfront. Because I think that there's a huge benefit at the end. So why don't you just give a little a little background or let the listeners know what are pre-construction services?
Sure. Well, I like to. I mean, most of our audience is probably a little bit older, and they're getting ready to build a home with you and you design it. But it's almost like a dating app where you have an opportunity to really get to know the builder, how he or she operates, and understand how they look at the project that may be different than what your lens is. So I like to say that it's like bringing in the mechanic. So you take your car into the auto shop, and you don't just have a bunch of executives sitting around where you don't talk about it with your wife or your spouse or significant other. You bring in the mechanic, and he or she will tell you, well, here's what's wrong with your car, or here's how you should proceed.
Yeah.
And so I think it's one more part of the team when you talk about bringing in the experts, and it's also a glimpse into how they operate. It's kind of a low risk investment to really get a sense of bringing in the person that's going to be doing the boots on the ground type of work, and maybe add some practicality to what you're looking at versus getting so far along in the build process, or excuse me, the design process, that you're like, well, what's it going to cost? So I think that incremental, just getting involved early and often, is really what a pre-construction service is.
Yeah, I agree, especially on the when we're talking about price, right? A big part of pre-construction services is getting sort of up-to-date budget updates as the design gets further along, right? And you can start talking about the types of exterior finishes that you're going to be using, the types of windows, the types of interior finishes. And for me as an architect, I'm not plugged into the sort of up-to-date market costs as much as a contractor is. And so being able to make decisions and then get sort of almost real-time feedback on what the financial implications of those decisions are is very valuable.
I would agree. That's well said.
And then you also mentioned the constructability, right? I mean, architects, we can, like, let's just take the building envelope for one example. If you're building a new home, there is 10 different ways, maybe 20 different ways you can approach the building envelope. And I might have a good idea of what I think is the best, but the contractor, they might have a different opinion, and maybe they've worked with a different system that installs easier or is one less step in terms of labor. And so, what do you think about reviewing sort of details as you move from a conceptual design to the construction drawings?
Yeah, I mean, I like, and I think that word decision, and I think you also add the word choice. And as you get further and further along in the design process, your choices actually become more limited. If you're going to decide, earlier we were talking about the insulated concrete forms. If you're going to build a house with that system, that's putting you down a certain path of eco-friendly and construction choices that maybe a conventional foundation house doesn't have. And I know that's that's maybe a little deeper, but I think giving a range and a choice and talking about just siding, can it be cedar? And when you look at cedar siding, it needs maintenance. It needs to be
Hmm.
painted. It needs to be stained. It needs to have, a certain rain screen approach. Then there's the hardy products, the cementitious based products, and that's a longer lasting, but it's also, maybe not as pure looking as the cedar would be. So
Yeah.
but all of those are different buckets of money as well. So when you talk about the whole process, it's not just looking at the material and the look and the feel, but it's also about what the cost implication is that happens with that choice. And I think that's where the contractor can at least speak in generality. I mean, this is not a pick this house and it's option A, B, and C. This is a custom home. I
Yep.
mean, almost all your projects are custom, right? There's very little that's out of the box.
Correct.
And
And yours as well, right?
yeah, so these are one-off prototypes. So we don't know exactly what it's going to cost, but we can give you a bucket or a range or a funnel that'll say this choice will lead to this amount of cost typically, and it will take about this much time, right? Because
Hmm.
oftentimes the more expensive the material, and we're still talking about the exterior envelope, but a lot of times the material selection will dictate how long it takes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
availability of the workforce, and is it more of a specialty finish. So I think that's where you as the architect come up with the vision and that then you include the client, with their input, and then you bring the builder in, and that person, together, the three of those main parties, and possibly an engineer and a few other
Hmm.
extraneous people, but that then you form a plan, and we've liked this idea, but is there another way to do it more efficiently? Or do we do the front of the house and not you start making a decision, because what you don't want to do is get done with it and then be like, well, I can't build it because it's too expensive.
Yeah. That's the
Or
worst case scenario.
it's the worst case scenario, and pre-construction doesn't solve that, but it absolutely is a big part of limiting your risk upfront
Hmm.
to
And
that sort of type of scenario.
yeah, and another thing that I really like about when a is engaged in pre-construction services is the contractor then becomes part of the conversation about why decisions are made, right? Whether that's in a structural system or a method of approaching the building envelope, like we just talked about, or even the layout of the floor plan, right? They get to be involved in this discussion of why. And I
Mhm.
think when you can understand why things are done, you have a much greater appreciation and a much more involved sort of decision making process than if you were just handed a completed set of documents and said, "Here, build this," right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, and I think there's a big part of the process in the learning curve is understanding how each person, how their role is in this situation, where there's some architects that are super strong and they just want to drive everything, and it's going to be a steel and concrete building that's uber expensive. And there's others going to be like this, let's have this be more natural and organic, and it's going to be softer finishes and
Hmm.
more off the shelf. So I think figuring out how you as a team can make those decisions that will give you just a better glimpse in how the process might work. And one of the examples I used was, as an owner advocating for yourself to say, we want to do, we don't want to just do, don't say we want to do flooring. Say we want to do, this Pinterest picture of this flooring, and then
Yeah.
the builder say, or the architect say, that's a 4-inch white oak, with an oil finish or a Rubio finish. And
Hmm.
and that might be a very different than the builder that's thinking luxury vinyl tile, at a
Yeah.
fraction of the cost of the hardwood. So, those big things are really what the input in is, really what's going to give you the output. And I think that's where the team and working with a builder, an architect, and an owner that want to collaborate, and really it's not necessarily pick the color, but it's pick the genre,
Yeah.
get the
Yeah.
vision, because that's really what will drive the cost.
Hmm.
And so I think that's an important part of building the team, and having for even the owners building the home to think about how they make decisions and what's important to them and where they fall in design and material and cost and finish.
And they're able to make those decisions more in a safer environment, right? Because there's not the pressure. Like if you wait to pick out the flooring until you're under construction and your flooring contractor is saying, okay, I've got to go, I got to order this material by next Tuesday or else we're not going to be on schedule, then the homeowner is sort of rushed into making that decision. Where if you have those conversations earlier in the design phase, then you can weigh the pros and cons and explore the pricing and the options and be a little bit more in a comfortable situation when you're making the decisions.
Right. Have that benefit of time and an
Yeah,
actual
exactly.
decision process. Yeah, well said.
So if a homeowner is interested in going the pre-construction route, how would they go about selecting a contractor to engage those services?
Yeah, I think the big piece is working. You have the architect that you've spent a ton of time choosing, and not just a plug for architects, but to work with that architect and maybe understanding who the client is and are they interested in working with a small builder, a builder that they can call or they know where he or she lives and down the street, and the local builder, or are they executives and have very little time and want more accountability and people that are more project management level, where there's people that are actually handling the design, the
Hmm.
interiors, all those different pieces. So you can be in all are great choices, and some have an impact to the budget, or they all have an impact to the budget, to the quality, to the time, and to the accountability. So I think I like to talk about it as let's pick a builder that you're going to potentially be able to use.
Yep.
We can't all use the highest end. We can't all use the lowest end. So pick a builder that is a good fit and that has built something that you've seen, right? That
Hmm.
you
Yep.
that you maybe recognize, and that's through your architect, master builders associations, those kind of things. But I think you try to pick someone that's in your league, as far as the type of home you build. If you want just a really nice standard home, then there's probably builders that cater to more than that than to the one-off luxury builder.
Yep.
So I think that's to me the big thing. And then the next part is to understand and do your due diligence, just like you were interviewing an employee for your firm. Is what are the jobs they've done? Have they were they at a price point? A square footage is always a good number. I've talked about what that really means, but are they a $200 square foot builder or a $500 square foot builder? And
Yeah.
if your house is 2,000 square feet and you want to build it for $400,000, then you probably don't want to be talking to the $500 square foot builder. So I think you as a homeowner can ask some of those questions up front and try to get to a builder that is in your kind of your category of home that you're trying to build, and that's using the architect and friends and other resources to figure out who that person is, and then
Yeah.
to make the call.
Yeah, exactly. What I like to do is, whenever I have a homeowner who's going to engage in pre-construction services, either that or if they're just going out to bid, I like to have the homeowner bring in two or three contractors and interview them, talk to them, have a
Yes.
conversation, because you want to you want to select a contractor that you're comfortable with, that you can have a conversation with and have a tough conversation with.
Yes.
And so, yes, look at their portfolio of completed work, look at the style that they usually build in, but definitely, have those conversations with them, because getting to know someone's personality, I think, is a big part of it.
Yes, I think that's well said. And the other thing I think that, even to go back to the very beginning of this conversation, is, our pre-construction agreement does not require you to build with us. It is simply a point in time
Yeah.
where we're going to work for you for 80 hours at this price, and when we're done, we're done.
Mm.
And that doesn't we often get the work because we've proven that we're a good fit and that, but it is a no obligation. It should be written in a way that's no obligation. It's a introduction. Let's see how it goes. Let's see how we work together. So it really is a neat way to me, it's a neat way to start a project, because you're getting a glimpse of how to make those tough decisions and how the team's going
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
interact.
So I know that there's going to be some listeners out there that might not understand that you should probably have a contract for your pre-construction services. It's not something that should just be winged and said, oh yeah, I'll look at that and I'll give you a budget price. There should be a written agreement between you and the contractor for those services. And I've seen it go both ways, right? I've seen contractors just say, oh yeah, I'll work with you, I'll meet with you a couple times, and so don't worry about the cost and we'll kind of figure it out later, sort of thing. That's not what you want. Right? You want something written down. You want to know what you're getting. You want to know how much that contractor is going to charge you for those services. And I think that's a really good point that you just brought up, that just because you engage a contractor for pre-construction services does not mean that you're obligated to use them for the construction.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things that for me the takeaway is that what are the deliverables that you're trying to get out of this arrangement? And to me, it really is an estimate based on the plans,
Yep.
and a schedule that's based on, estimated time of starting the project. A winter start is going to take longer than a summer start. Think about those kind of things. And then probably just some another piece is what I would call value engineering, some options. You
Yep.
could do this route with cedar, or you could do this route with hardy. You could do this one with the luxury vinyl tile, this one with or a hybrid, right? It doesn't have to be that,
Yeah.
but I think if you ask for those things, and then I think the big piece is to ask for a second version. So you as the architect develop plans, and then, oh wait, I think this could be really good, or this is an opportunity now. So you want to have some flexibility. You don't want to get a number from the builder and then have it find out that, well, that's really not the plan we're doing. So
Yeah.
I think you want something that's more dynamic, and I think you want to have, maybe it's two versions of option one, kind of where we're at right now, and then option two as we develop the plans in 2 months.
Yep.
So I think that's a real big part of that piece. You want it to be, again, part of the team, but also part of the process. And architectural plans, they build upon themselves. So, have someone that can adjust as you go.
Do you think that there's any like minimum number of meetings that you'd like to have with a homeowner as you're reviewing the plans? I mean, obviously more than one, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of different things that can give you some core numbers to make, because what you want is the input to be accurate, right? You want if you are going for a vinyl window package and I'm bidding Anderson or Lowen or some high different national brand, then we're already disconnected on what the price would be, because one window package might be $15,000 and one might be $45,000 or whatever that might be. So I think the number of meetings are really based on the type of home you're building, and understanding kind of the path forward of how people, of what kind of home they're building. And I think that starts with the very first question, Chris, is how much do you want to spend? And
Yep.
maybe, and I don't think it's to hold your cards and say, well, I tell them I'm going to spend X amount, and then the builder's going to come in and price it at that. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just suggesting that you want to get to a number, and when you're building an estimate, you may make changes like the insulated concrete forms versus the standard foundation. The type of framing lumber you use, whether you use a plywood exterior sheathing or an OSB sheathing, all those have a cost implication, so that the build can be accurate. The build cost can be accurate based on your input. So if you were to throw out a couple of meetings, I would say it's 3 meetings to get to the first estimate, and then a meeting to talk about that, and then another version of that and a follow-up. So I think it's but to me it's early as often as you possibly can.
Yeah.
But I think, I don't, if I was to throw out a number, 4 to 6 meetings would be comfortable to me at a pre-con. Over a 2-month period.
Yeah, over 2-3 months. Yeah, probably.
Yep.
And then even staying involved throughout the rest of the project as the drawings are being finalized. But One of the things that I usually do, or one of the things that I've done on my projects is when I'm coming up with a design, I'll usually, come up with 2 or 3 different design options, and then eventually we narrow it down to one that we're moving forward with. And then I think I say that that's usually a good time to bring in the contractor for the pre-construction services. I'm almost wondering, is there even a, and maybe I know the answer to this, but I think, like, is there a benefit to having the contractor come in even before those decisions are made? When you have 3 different ways that you could go with the design, 3 different design options, and then you can get the contractor's input on each of them.
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends to me on what type of client you have. I mean, the more people that are involved in the decision, the harder decisions tend to get to be made. To me, I like to, at that point, just to speak in the generalities.
Yeah.
If you do a daylight basement here, at our cost in Seattle, that's a very expensive space. If you're in Eastern Washington, 4 hours from here, if you don't build a basement, your house usually doesn't sell because it's such a common feature. So, but their dirt export is less expensive. So to me, I think you can give some input early on, in just some real generalities, and just say, based on the site conditions, based on access, things that can be considered that I think are maybe even more for the architect.
Yeah. Maybe.
So I think that's a great meeting too, because I don't know if that even requires a pre-con. Maybe that's just meeting with a builder and asking some questions. And
Yeah. There you go.
most people I run with are willing to do that. So
Maybe that's a good way. Maybe that's a good way to work that into the interview stage of the pre-construction. You can,
yes,
bring in 3 contractors to look at the design options, have a little conversation about that, and then you can evaluate as a homeowner. You can say, "Wow, I really enjoyed the conversation with Mark. Let's move forward with him."
yeah, and I think too, it's just like in anything in life. If I've never even heard of an ICFC foundation, I'm probably not the right fit if that's really what you want to do. You can't convert someone to be more green or more efficient. We've always built it this way. We're not changing. That might not be the person you want, or it is. Maybe so I think you can hear those little subtleties early on in those conversations that really should be little bells that tell you, oh, this person's dialed, or this probably is not. This is going to be a conflict most of the project.
Yeah. I think I'd like to get into move the discussion into what are the roles of the architect, the homeowner, and the contractor during pre-construction. And I think I'll go first,
Sure.
being the architect. I think, and you can add onto this if you would like to see more things. But I think as the architect, my role is to explain the reasonings behind the design decisions, to outline what the goals are as a performance metric in terms of energy efficiency, and building envelope. Maybe a quick review of what I'm thinking of for structural systems, right? Like, and we can say, oh, we're going to frame this with floor trusses, right? Or are we going to frame it with? I actually have a homeowner who's decided to use steel bar joists and a metal deck, like more of a commercial type of construction. So, or is it framed with regular 2x, right? And so, you know, reviewing the purpose, reviewing the efficiency goals, what I'm thinking of structure, and just because I'm thinking that at the early design phase, that doesn't mean that that's what the structure is going to be, but getting input on the structure.
Mhm.
A brief discussion on the goals and thoughts of the types of mechanical systems, right? Is it going to be a radiant system, a geothermal? Is it going to be a forced air? Is it going to use fossil fuels or solar panels and be an electric system? So I think sort of providing that sort of general outline to the project goals is what I'm thinking my role is as the architect during pre-construction.
Yeah, and what I like about that is that they're very, you start talking about steel and trusses and pandex and all that, and that's not our typical client.
Yeah,
Some are, but most of them we're like, well, I just want a floor that doesn't squeak.
that doesn't
I
speak. Yeah,
don't, and so that I mean, I think that really is your role. I think for the homeowner, I think it's really important, especially if there's two homeowners involved, that they figure out how to make decisions and how to communicate, I
Yep.
think is really their role, because and to be able to advocate and to say what they want. And again, we don't need them to be an expert, but show us a picture.
Hmm.
Give us an inclination of what that is, and be aligned between the two parties so that there's no confusion. This is the and again, that takes time. Show images that you like and that you agree on. Too often, one wants modern, one wants super traditional, or and you see that, and you end up with the house that's a combo. But I think
Yeah.
that's the role of the homeowner, is to really to really focus on how they make decisions, and what decisions they want to make and be involved in.
To add on to that, I would think the homeowner also, they should be open and honest. Especially about the budget, as we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
They should be not judging, but they should be evaluating on whether they can have a conversation with the contractor, right? Is They should be thinking in the back of their mind, is this someone I can work with? And then the also, I think one of their roles is to understand that just because something's talked about during some of these early meetings during pre-construction, that doesn't mean that the decision is being set in stone.
Correct.
A lot of people get a little hung up on, like, oh, we talked about this and now we're forced into doing that. It's like, no, where these are just sort of high level conversations at this point.
Yeah. And for me, as the contractor, I think it's having that open discussion about kind of what, when you look at a house that you're building and you have their program and you end up at 2,700 square feet or whatever that number is, to actually be able to do some early math to say this is the type of home. So you may not have a decision to choose cedar siding because you are at your price point, you're into hardy siding, which
Yep.
which is not a I mean, I have hardy siding in my personal home, so it's not a quality, but it is a cost
Hmm.
decision, and it's an aesthetic decision. So I think for the contractors, being getting the information out of the client in a positive way to find out really where they want to be in a budget,
Yep.
because it's so easy to go outside of that. I think checking in often. I mean, it's their home. It's not my home. It's not your
Hmm.
home.
Yep.
And so you can do little, like, just check in here. Here's what I'm thinking about the cost of. Here's what I think for the interiors. You have a 6-inch base. You have this, and they might not even know what that means. But you walk in their own home, and do you like these cabinets or you don't like these cabinets? You want to
Yep.
spend. Do you want wood? Do you want melamine? Do you want? And so just get a sense of that. And I try to apply. Like, I want solid core doors in all my houses. I want to give a certain level of luxury, but
Hmm.
not everywhere. Maybe not every bathroom gets floor heat,
Yeah.
or so kind of get it. So I think, and then I think the other big role of mine is options and allowances. Oh, I don't even know what floor heat is. We've never had that in our house. Well, it's $1,500 a bathroom. You have
Hmm.
3 bathrooms, it's $4,500. And you can do a little column onto the right that your budget is this, and then if you want floor heat, it's this.
Yep.
And I think that people want to have choices and they don't know what they're choosing. So I think that's really my role, is to get them into a path that meets what they're looking for, and then to narrow down a decision process for them. And again, it's still this. We're not building. We don't have
Yep.
a signed contract with the client or the subcontractor, but it gets you the right momentum to at least be like, plus or minus 20%. This is probably what it's going to be, and it gets you on the right path. And I think I think those are really the roles that I like to play in the pre-con.
Yeah. And I think there's also a role that we both get to play, is that of education. And, we can talk about, insulation, right? Are we using cellulose? Are we using mineral wool? Are we using spray foam? The homeowner might just say, oh, I can get a better R value and a good price out of spray foam, but they might not understand some of the other issues that come along with that, as in,
Right.
not being able to make changes in the future because the spray foam sticks to everything, or off gassing, or carbon footprint. And maybe they don't care about carbon footprint. They just care about the R value and the air sealing. And so sometimes I think the homeowner might make decisions without the level of education, but as if I'm in the room and you're in the room and we're talking about these different approaches, we can explain the pros and cons to them a little bit better. And especially if there's two people in the room, and if they're saying the same thing, then the homeowner, I think, has a level of comfort.
No, and I'm very passionate about insulation. I'm also very passionate about noise suppression between rooms, and
Yep.
using the rock wool and the mineral wool in between floors, and other methods to keep these houses nice and quiet, and good places to live. But there's a cost to that, and builder A may not budget in floor insulation because it's not required by code. So, I mean, that's
Yeah.
part of that discussion with the client. Is hearing your kids run upstairs, annoying. And if it is, then maybe we should spend some money on
Yeah.
maybe some cork below the flooring, or some acoustic mats, or double layer drywall with green glue. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we can put to them and put a price to, and maybe that's not pre-construction, but it's understanding and the builder and how he or she thinks about those things, right? If it's I'm thinking about those kind of things, and because you aren't, and
Yeah.
then I'm going to ask you, hey, we have an opportunity here. It's going to cost more money. Here's what it's going to look like, and here's what you're going to get for it. Is this something you want to consider, and give that choice? So I think there's a lot of great things that come out of this, and you're not going to hit it all, but again, you're just trying to build a baseline of can you reasonably build the home you want to build in this market, with the team that you have set.
And I think that's the biggest value right there, right? Not only are you going to get into a smoother construction period, because all these things have been talked about, but you get that assurance that what we're planning is feasible here.
Yeah, and then I think and like you said, we're also advisors. Our Seattle market is our cost is up 7.6% from 2022 to 2023.
Oh wow!
So when you talk about a budget that I did 6 months ago, and it's a $500,000 budget, it's now $540,000 budget.
Yeah.
And that is not anything that the homeowner did, the contractor. It is just a fact.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what do you typically need for a contingency? What do you, these are, but once you have that baseline, then you can do that. You can apply a 20% contingency, or it's going to take
Mm-hmm.
12 months to build this home. So we should plan on another 10% in cost during this time, and
Yeah.
smart. And if we can't, then maybe we need to wait a year,
Yeah. Yeah.
or whatever that,
or reduce
whatever
the
that might be.
size, or reduce the quality, or
Yeah. So having that flexibility, I think, is really important.
Great. So we touched on the deliverables to expect, right? We're going to get the homeowner should expect a budget with some options, a general schedule, any review of any obstacles that might be in the way, especially if it's a renovation project, or if there's other things like, as an example, I'm working on a project that has wetlands all over the place, and we have to really plan around the wetlands, and so knowing that up front is an obstacle to plan around. Value engineering, different, as going over the different options of what you can choose from, and then any recommendations that the contractor may have. And that's not only recommendations. The way I'm perceiving this is that's not only recommendations from you to the homeowner, but also from you to me, right? You can the benefit from me is you can say, oh, Chris, that framing plan looks great, but that's not how we're going to do it. We're really going to do it like this, and
Right.
and that will allow me to update the drawings before they sort of go for permit.
Yeah, I mean, that, everybody wants to keep away from doing steel, but they don't realize that the glue lam beam that's required in that spot is 18 inches and sits down in the room 12 inches, and so maybe,
Yeah, exactly.
steel is a better option.
Yeah.
But that can be the whole group, or it can just be the architect and builder. But it's definitely stuff that needs to be discussed for sure.
Is there anything else that you might think is good to know about pre-construction? Any other tips?
I think it's like I said at the very beginning, it's choosing a team that even in one of our very first podcasts, it's like how is the situation when it's pouring down rain and miserable and things aren't going the way you want, or the dirt, it's a sandy loam and it's taken out. We've had to take out an extra 400 yards of dirt at hundreds of dollars a yard, and where do you adjust and pivot? So I think it really is having an open mind and doing work, because good people and good project managers, and you can tell. I mean, you can go look at jobs, you can do that, and it's not because you need to know construction. I think our homeowners are very smart people, and they should advocate and do things for themselves to feel comfortable with who they're hiring, not just because it's good for I love the architect referrals. I love being part of those referrals, but I want the homeowner to feel really comfortable and go look at other people, see if
Yeah.
it's a better fit, because this is a big commitment. And I think that's what pre-con is. It's an opportunity to get in there, and you get into it, and you get back some hand scratched estimates or one number from the builder. It's like, well, to me, I want to know, well, what window are you putting in?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that a bid or was that an allowance? Is that, and so you start talking about that, and there's so many great, I mean, your podcast, there's great programs that can identify and help navigate that. And I think that's really what you want to get out of this is you don't know about building. So are you picking a team member that can bring you along and help you? And I think that's really the benefit of the pre-con.
Great. Well, this has been a great discussion, Mark, as always. Mark Martin, everyone from Schultz Miller. Thank you very much for joining me once again.
Yes, my pleasure.
And I look forward to the next time we get to talk.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. See ya. Thanks.